Erev Tov, everyone. Parsha of Tetzaveh is singular in the respect that the name of Moshe Rabbeinu does not appear in the Parsha. From the beginning of Chumash Shmos to the end, in the years when the Tzavim and Vayelech go together, then Moshe Rabbeinu appears in every Shabbos Kriya except for Tetzaveh, which naturally leads to a great discussion amongst all of the Meforshim why that should be. So there is a famous comment, they say it the name of the Chatam Sofer, but apparently there were others that preceded him in that as well. In Parshat Ki Sisa, next Shabbos, God willing, we will read that when Moshe descends and sees the Egel and breaks the Luchos, the Ribono Shel Olam tells him that he intends to destroy the Jewish people. And I will make you a great nation. We'll start all over with you. Moshe Rabbeinu refuses the offer. And he says, you have to forgive them. And if you don't forgive them, take me out of the book. Erase me from the book. In other words, I'm bound to the Jewish people, no Jewish people, no Moshe. Take me out of the book. So we have a rule that Saudi goes there, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mekayim. If Moshe says, erase me from the book, so there has to be, so to speak, a kiyum. There has to be a fulfillment of what he said. And first, you point out, by the way, this is an aside, but nevertheless, it's part of it, that even if a statement is made conditionally, and Moshe made it conditionally, Moshe said, if you don't forgive them, but the Ribono Shel Olam did forgive them, so the condition was never fulfilled. Nevertheless, the statement itself is sufficient to bring it about, even if one said it conditionally. It only goes to show how careful one has to be with one's words, because of the fact that most times in life, what we say comes back to haunt us, especially words that we said in our youth. I used to say in the yeshiva that the young men should remember everything they say to their parents, because they will hear it repeated to them verbatim 25 years later by their own children. So Moshe said, erase me from the book. So the Ribono Shel Olam erased him. But he postponed the Gzeira a whole year. Moshe said it in Parshas Ki Sisa, and the Gzeira did not take effect until Parshas Tetzaveh, which is the last Parsha before Ki Sisa. That's when it took effect. And that's why Moshe Rabbeinu's name does not appear, because of the fact that he himself, so to speak, erased himself from the book. That's the pshat of the Chatam Sofer. There are many, many pshatim, but there's another pshat that I want to share with you, why Moshe Rabbeinu's name doesn't appear. It says, V'atot tetzaveh b'nei Yisrael. You shall command the Jewish people. V'yikchu elecha shemen zayis zoch koses lamor. That they should bring this special oil pure, beaten, so that there would be light for the menorah. The Gemara itself says, "V'chila ora hu tzorech." The Ribono Shel Olam needs light. He needs the menorah. The reason was that the menorah is the symbol of Torah, a symbol of godliness, of spirituality, and therefore it has to be produced by human beings. Heaven does not provide us with spiritual nutrition. That has to be created by human beings. So one would say, if it would say, Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe lemor, if God told Moshe to say, to take Shem and Zayazoch Kosis Lamor, so we would say that's Moshe's responsibility, like the rest of the Torah is his responsibility. He has to teach it. The Shemen for the Moor was the responsibility of every Jew. Everyone has their own menorah. Everyone lights it. The question is, what kind of oil do you use to light it? And we find throughout Tanakh the miracles that occur with the oil. The famous story of Elisha with the woman that the slave master was going to take her 2 sons. And Elisha said, "What do you have in the house?" And she said, "I have a little oil." He said, "So start pouring." So the miracle always happens with the oil. The Nes of Chanukah is the oil. The Ner HaMarovi is in the Beis HaMikdash. The menorah was the oil. Somehow it always burns. And Moshe learned that lesson at the burning bush when he first was inducted. The bush is burning in the fire, and the sneh is never consumed. It keeps on burning. So Moshe saw his mission. He said, "Osura no va'eres amare hagodol hazeh madua lo yivar hasneh." So he saw his mission in the fact that the fire never was extinguished, that it burns and burns and burns. And it's not dependent on natural sources once it is lit and begins. So Moshe understands that as the mitzvah here with the shemen. And so therefore that's a mitzvah on each and every person. The other mitzvahs, we know that there are many mitzvahs that we can never fulfill in our lives. If you're not a Kohen, so you're out a whole bunch of mitzvahs. There's no Beis HaMikdash, you're out mitzvahs. There are many circumstances in life that there are no mitzvahs, that you can't do anything. But the main mitzvah you can do is to supply the oil, which is that within yourself, you have the ability to create the fire that's necessary. I have a story that I heard from Rabbi Wein Mincha, who was the Rav in Baltimore. He was the head of the OU for a while. He lives here in Israel. So he was a psychologist before he went into the rabbinate full time. And he was a very well-known, astute therapist. But there came a time, he said, that, like he couldn't deal with all the sorrows that he heard. It's part of the problem in all of these fields. is that it becomes too much. You can't take it. So he decided that he was going to call up the Lubavitcher Rebbe and ask him what to do. And the Rebbe then was taking phone calls from 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. on a certain night. So he calls up, and the Gabbai picks up the phone and he says, Veret, who's talking? He says, this is a Jew from Maryland. And I have a question for the Rebbe. So he hears the Gabbai ask the Rebbe, there's a Jew from Maryland, he has a question. He says, let him ask the question. So he asked the question. He said, how am I supposed to deal with all of the problems that come to my doorstep? Because that's really what the Rebbe is, the expert. The Rebbe hears only tzoros. Nobody comes back and tells the Rebbe, it was great advice. They only tell you the tzoros. So how do you deal with it? So the Rebbe says, he hears in the background, the Rebbe says to the Gabbai, tell him he should go consult with Dr. Weinreb. Weinreb's an Ehrlich Yid, then I'm going to consult with Weinreb. So the Gabbai tells Weinreb, the Rebbe said he should consult with Weinreb. So the Rabbi Weinreb said, Ich bin Weinreb. I'm Weinreb. So he hears that the Gabbai is shocked. So he turns to the Rebbe and he said, das Herr allein is Weinreb. So the Rebbe said, you have to consult with yourself. There's a great lesson there. You want to solve the problem, talk to yourself. The therapist may help you, but he can't solve the problem. You have to talk to yourself. And that's the idea of the Shem and Lamor. And therefore, it's not Moshe. Moshe can't help you here. You have to talk to yourself. You have to light the fire yourself. And if you're able to do so, then Vasnein and Ukol. So then you have a miracle that the fire doesn't go out. So that's a profound shot here in this matter. And it's something that we should consider and remember because it has really great influence on our lives. Rabbi Chananya ben Akashi Omer Rotzah Kodesh Baruch Hu v'Zakos Yisrael Vilcho Chibur Lahem Torah Mitzvot Shenemar Anoich Havetzim An Tzidko